Introduction. There's a silent thief that robs more dreams than failure ever could. It doesn't wear a mask. It wears approval. It whispers, "What will people say?" And just like that, a great idea dies before it even begins. Today, I want to talk about breaking free from that voice, because the day you stop caring about what others think is the day you truly start living body. We spend years of our lives trying to fit into circles that don't understand us, jobs that don't excite us, and expectations that don't belong to us. We worry about opinions that change every day. And yet we forget that our time here is limited. When you stop caring about every voice around you, you finally hear the one voice that truly matters. Your own caring too much makes you hesitate, but courage begins when you decide to live on your own terms. Don't let the fear of judgment chain your progress. Those who criticize you today will admire you tomorrow. Once your results speak louder than their words, I have learned again and again that failure never hurts as much as regret does. Regret for the chances we didn't take, the dreams we buried under the weight of other people's opinions. Closing. So stop caring, not because you're arrogant, but because you've realized that your happiness deserves space. Stop caring, not because you've stopped listening, but because you've started living. When you free yourself from the noise of others, you begin to hear the beautiful rhythm of your own life. And that rhythm is where real living begins. Of course, here's an 800-word expansion of the first keynote. Overthinking is a thief of joy. Caring too much about what others think limits your potential. It's written in the same inspiring, thoughtful, and humble tone as Dr. Ratan Tata would use in a real talk. Smooth, conversational, and deeply reflective, without any headings or breaks. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize that the biggest battles are not fought in the outside world, but within their own mind. Most of us don't lose to failure, we lose to fear. Fear of what others might say. Fear of being judged. Fear of not being enough in the eyes of people who often don't even matter in our journey. Overthinking is one of those silent enemies that disguises itself as caution, but in truth it steals our peace, our focus, and most tragically, our joy. We often tell ourselves that we are being careful, that we are simply thinking things through, but what we are really doing is doubting ourselves to the point of paralysis. Every time we care too much about what people will think, we hand over a little bit of our freedom to them. We let their imagined opinions guide our decisions, their expectations dictate our choices, and their approval define our worth. Slowly, we start living a life that is not truly ours. We move through each day not with excitement, but with hesitation, thinking, will they like it? Will they approve? Will they understand me? And the truth is, they might not, they don't have to, because your life is not a democracy of opinions. It is a personal journey of discovery. Overthinking often begins with good intentions. We want to do things right. We want to make the best choice. And we want to avoid mistakes. But somewhere along the way, that healthy reflection turns into a habit of hesitation. We start analyzing every word, every action, every possible outcome, until we are too exhausted to act at all. And in that process, we forget something very simple. Life rewards action, not perfection. You can spend months thinking about the perfect time to start something, but that moment will never come unless you take the first imperfect step. I have met many young people who are full of talent, full of energy, full of dreams, but they hold themselves back because they fear failure or criticism. They say things like, what if people laugh at me? Or what if I don't succeed? And my answer to them is always this: what if they laugh and you still succeed later? What if you fail once, but that failure teaches you something so valuable that it becomes the foundation of your success? You cannot please everyone, and you don't have to, because the truth is, the world doesn't remember those who never tried. It remembers those who had the courage to act, even when others doubted them. Caring too much about opinions makes us prisoners of perception. We start dressing a certain way, talking a certain way, thinking a certain way, not because it's who we are, but because it's who the world expects us to be. We start shrinking ourselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for us. And in doing so, we lose the most precious thing we have, authenticity. There is something incredibly powerful about being comfortable in your own skin, about doing what you love simply because it fulfills you, not because it impresses others. The truth is, no one is thinking about us as much as we think they are. Everyone is busy fighting their own battles, facing their own insecurities. Yet we live as if there's a spotlight on us all the time. We spend so much energy worrying about what others might think that we forget to enjoy the simple beauty of being alive. Overthinking takes us out of the present moment. It makes us replay the past and pre-live the future, both of which we cannot control. And while we are lost in thoughts, life quietly slips by. The laughter we didn't share, the opportunities we didn't take, the moments we didn't live. To truly live, we must let go. Let go of the constant need for validation, the obsession with perfection, and the fear of judgment. Because when you stop caring so much about what others think, you start hearing your own voice more clearly. That voice will tell you where you belong, what excites you, what drives you. It will remind you of your purpose. And when you begin to follow that inner voice, life becomes simpler, lighter, and much more meaningful. Overthinking is a thief that steals silently. It doesn't break the door, it just walks in through doubt. And by the time we notice, it has already taken away our confidence, our spontaneity, our peace. The only way to protect ourselves is to trust in who we are, to trust that mistakes are part of the journey, and to trust that even if people talk, it's okay. Their words don't define our worth, our actions do. So the next time you find yourself hesitating because of what others might think, remind yourself of this. Those who truly care about you will support you, and those who don't, their opinions are just noise. Life is too short to live in fear of noise. Don't let your mind be a battlefield of other people's opinions. Be kind to yourself. Be bold enough to be misunderstood for a while, because eventually those who laughed will respect your courage, and those who doubted will admire your persistence. Overthinking might seem harmless, but it costs us more than we realize. It costs us our peace of mind, our happiness, and our time. And time, once lost, never returns. So stop worrying about what could go wrong and start believing in what could go right. You don't need the approval of the crowd to move forward. You only need the belief that your journey matters, because it does. When you free yourself from the burden of overthinking and the fear of judgment, life begins to flow again. Decisions become easier, smiles come naturally, sleep becomes peaceful, and most importantly, joy returns. Not because everything is perfect, but because you finally stop trying to be perfect for everyone else. That is when you truly start living. Fear is a strange thing. It doesn't always show up as panic or trembling hands. Often it hides behind polite excuses. It disguises itself as logic, caution, or humility. But deep down, fear is what keeps most people from truly living. And one of the greatest forms of fear we face today is the fear of judgment, the worry about what people will say, how they will react, and whether they will approve of our choices. Yet the truth is simple. Freedom begins where fear ends. The moment you stop letting judgment control your actions, you begin to live a life that is truly yours. Every person has dreams. some small, some enormous, but between a dream and its fulfillment lies a wall built of opinions, expectations, and doubts. What if people think I'm foolish? What if they don't support me? What if I fail and they laugh? These questions echo in our minds until we quietly step back and convince ourselves to play it safe. We start calling it practicality, but what it really is fear, the fear of not being accepted, the fear of not being enough. And so many people live their entire lives inside invisible cages built by their own worries about other people's thoughts. Your life is your message. Every action, every decision, and every word you speak tells the world who you are long before you ever introduce yourself. People often believe that their message is in their success, their titles, or their achievements. But in reality, your message is in how you live, how you treat others, how you respond to challenges, how you rise after failure, and how you stay grounded when life tests your patience. It's not what you say that defines you, it's what you consistently do, even when no one is watching. We spend so much time trying to express ourselves through speeches, social media, and words that we forget the most powerful language in the world is behavior. You can inspire someone more by your actions in a single moment than by 1,000 well-crafted sentences. When your actions reflect your values, you don't need to explain who you are. People feel it. They see it in how you work, how you lead, how you forgive, and how you handle success with humility. The greatest leaders in history didn't have to shout to be heard. Their integrity and consistency spoke louder than any words ever could. In life, we all leave a legacy. The question is not whether we will leave one, but what kind it will be. Some people leave behind wealth, others leave behind wisdom. But the most meaningful legacy is one of character, the quiet, powerful message of a life lived with purpose. When you decide that your life itself is your message, you begin to live differently. You stop doing things just to be seen. You stop pretending to be someone else. Instead, you start aligning your daily choices with your deepest beliefs. You live in a way that reflects what truly matters to you. We live in a world where image often seems more important than authenticity. People try to curate perfect lives, to appear happy, successful, and confident. But no filter, no words, and no pretense can hide the truth. For long, the world eventually sees who we really are through how we act in difficult times. Your message isn't written in your successes. It's written in how you handle your struggles. When you lose, do you blame others or take responsibility? When you succeed, do you boast or give gratitude? When life becomes unfair, do you surrender or rise above it? These moments define the real message of your life. Everyone has the ability to influence others, not just through power or money, but through character. A kind word can inspire courage. A simple act of honesty can change someone's day. A quiet act of generosity can restore someone's faith in humanity. You don't need a stage, a microphone, or 1 million followers to make an impact. You only need a sincere heart and the will to live with integrity. When your daily life reflects kindness, respect, and authenticity, your presence itself becomes a lesson to others. Failure is not shameful. Inaction is. It is easy to misunderstand failure. Many people treat it like a permanent label, something that defines who they are. But failure is never final. It is simply feedback. It tells us what doesn't work, where we need to grow, and how much stronger we can become. Yet, because we fear being judged, we often choose not to act at all. We hesitate, we postpone, and we convince ourselves that it's better not to try than to fail. But what we don't realize is that by avoiding action, we are already failing. Quietly, slowly, and without learning anything from it. In life, everyone wants success, but very few are willing to take the risk of looking foolish in the process. We admire achievers, but we forget that every success story has chapters of struggle, rejection, and defeat. No one ever reached the top without first facing moments of doubt, but the difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is simple. The brave ones tried, while the fearful ones only imagined. Action, even when imperfect, always brings growth. Inaction brings nothing but regret. We are taught from a young age to avoid mistakes. Schools, society, even families sometimes make us believe that being wrong is something to be ashamed of. So we grow up afraid to experiment, afraid to raise our hands, afraid to take paths that are not guaranteed. But real life is not a classroom. There is no perfect answer, no fixed path, and no promise of certainty. The only way to learn is by doing, by falling, and by getting back up again. The people who move forward are not the ones who never fall. They are the ones who refuse to stay down. When you try something new, you invite both possibility and risk. You may fail, and yes, people may talk, they might criticize, they might laugh, but remember, the people who mock from the sidelines are rarely the ones doing anything meaningful themselves. Those who act, who build, who dream, they understand that failure is a natural part of progress. Every mistake teaches you something valuable that success never can. It sharpens your character, deepens your understanding, and prepares you for the next step. Peace comes from self-approval. True happiness begins the moment you stop seeking validation from others and start finding contentment within yourself. For most of us, life becomes an endless pursuit of approval from parents, friends, teachers, colleagues, and society. We grow up being told what success should look like, how we should live, and even how we should feel. And somewhere in the process of trying to meet everyone's expectations, we forget what actually makes us happy. We start chasing applause instead of peace, recognition instead of purpose. But the truth is, no amount of external praise can fill the emptiness that comes from not being at peace with yourself. It's human nature to want to be liked and appreciated. Everyone enjoys feeling seen and valued. But problems begin when that need turns into dependency. When our self-worth becomes tied to how others perceive us, the moment we allow people's opinions to define our confidence, we lose control of our happiness. Because opinions change constantly. One day they love you, the next day they question you. One day you are celebrated, the next you are criticized. If your peace depends on approval, you will never find stability, because you will always be at the mercy of others' moods, beliefs, and judgments. The greatest freedom in life comes when you stop waiting for permission to be yourself. When you stop asking, will they like this? And start asking, do I like this? When your choices are driven by your values, instead of others' expectations, you start to feel light. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are finally living honestly. Approval is temporary. Authenticity is timeless. When you live authentically, you may lose some people, but you will gain yourself, and that is the most precious gain of all. We often confuse success with peace. Many people achieve great things, earn wealth and recognition, yet feel an emptiness they cannot explain. That emptiness comes from living a life measured by others. You can achieve everything the world tells you is important and still feel restless inside, because your heart knows the difference between approval and alignment. Peace doesn't come from the noise of applause. It comes from the quiet satisfaction of knowing you did what felt right. Self-approval doesn't mean arrogance. It means accepting yourself, your flaws, your mistakes, and your uniqueness. It means understanding that you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. The world constantly tries to convince you that you are not enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not talented enough. But peace begins when you stop listening to that noise. You start realizing that being enough has nothing to do with comparison and everything to do with self-acceptance. The moment you stop trying to fit into someone else's definition of enough, you begin to experience real happiness. When you approve of yourself, your mind becomes calmer. You stop competing unnecessarily, you stop comparing constantly, and you stop seeking validation that never lasts. You begin to enjoy life's simple moments again. A conversation, a sunrise, a small achievement, because you are no longer measuring your worth through someone else's eyes. You start to live in the present instead of performing for an audience. That's when real peace begins to grow, quietly, deeply, and steadily. It takes courage to approve of yourself in a world that constantly tells you to be more. It takes strength to stand firm when others misunderstand you. But remember, every person who ever made a difference in this world was once doubted. They faced rejection, criticism, and judgment, but they didn't stop believing in themselves. They knew that peace isn't found in convincing everyone else. It's found in staying true to who you are. Every time you look for approval outside yourself, you give away a piece of your power. You let others decide how you should feel about your life. But when you start approving of yourself, that power returns to you. You start setting your own standards. You stop trying to impress and start trying to improve. And improvement that comes from peace, not pressure, always leads to genuine happiness. At the end of the day, peace is not found in perfection. It's found in acceptance. You are allowed to grow and still be proud of who you are. You are allowed to make mistakes and still be worthy of love. You are allowed to change your mind, to heal, to start over. When you give yourself that permission, you free your heart from the burden of trying to be someone else. You start living life not to be admired, but to be fulfilled. The world will always have something to say. Some will support you, others will doubt you. But if your sense of peace depends on their approval, you will keep chasing happiness that slips through your fingers. Approve of yourself. Be proud of the effort, even when the outcome isn't perfect. Celebrate your progress, even when others don't notice. Love yourself for surviving, for trying, and for staying true in a world that constantly pushes you to change. When you find peace within, you no longer need applause to feel worthy. You no longer crave validation to feel enough. You simply live calmly, confidently, and contentedly, and that, more than any success or recognition, is the greatest form of freedom a person can ever achieve.